Okay, guys, what was the first thing we were going to talk about? I can't remember.
We're going to introduce ourselves.
Oh,
Hi,
gosh.
this is Tim Hodge. I directed half of this show.
Two-thirds.
Two-thirds of the show, and I'm sitting here with...
I'm David Pitts, and I produced the show.
And I'm Brian Roberts, and I directed the remaining third,
And we'll divide up the parts later and tell you who did what.
roughly.
Yeah, and this is the part of the show, of the commentary, that is, where we sit around and wish we could redo this animation.
Well, it is getting a little bit old, but, it's...
But we always talk about
it's
it.
classic, and,
They did redo it once, but I think we've talked about that before, haven't we?
we probably will eventually redo it. But I do get asked that every show, and we haven't done it.
Bob's
So.
hair is different now. That was more like Kermit hair.
It's because we put all our efforts into the rest of the show to make it as good as possible.
But anyway, we decided to do the story of Gideon, as you're about to find out. And our development process is long and arduous, trying to figure out what's the best show to do each time.
Yeah.
But Gideon came up because we wanted to do another Bible story, because we try to keep those interspersed with all of our stories. And
Well, we had a list. We had a list of stories that we were going to work on,
Yeah.
and we just looked through them, and this particular story of Gideon. Well, I know Tim, you may want to say something,
Yes,
but I know it's one of your favorite stories growing up as a kid.
yeah, we had a 33 and a third RPM record album with about 10 Bible stories on it, and Gideon was one of my favorites on there. And I've always loved this. In fact, when I was in high school, I even started doing a comic book version of Gideon. I never finished it, though. I think I still have the artwork, though.
Well, there's something really. It was one of my favorite stories. It wasn't my favorite necessarily, but it was one of my favorites growing up as well. And there's something really appealing about a story of a guy that kind of sees himself as sort of insignificant, but yet God uses him in doing mighty things.
And I'm Larry the Cucumber. Welcome to VeggieTales. Today,
This is my directorial debut here.
That's right.
I directed the countertop on this show, as well as the story of George Mueller.
Yeah, this is one of the rare countertops where you can actually read the letter, too. I mean, from the camera. Usually it's just a piece of paper and we never see the other side of it.
Yeah, we started putting textures on the letters usually.
Yeah, and you might wonder, why do we have the pirates in this one? Well, we were developing this show knowing that we were about to do a pirates movie, a feature. And so, it seemed like a good opportunity to reintroduce these guys. They're going to be, this show would be coming out at least a year before the movie was released. So it seemed like a good time to start talking about the movie. And they're just so much fun to have on there anyway.
Yeah, we had to dig their costumes out of mothballs, figuratively speaking, but we did have to dig up the digital database and have to. We remodeled some of them
We remodeled all of them, actually.
to look exactly like they did in.
Well,
Jonah.
hopefully. I mean, they got like 85% there, but I think they look great. The modelers did a great job recreating the stuff. I think Lunt particularly looks just spot on.
Oh yeah, the look of his tooth gave us a little bit of fits, but it came off really, really nice. I really like Paul's mustache in this. I think it even turned out better than the Jonah version.
Yeah, they rigged that so that the mustaches moved automatically with the mouths, and we hadn't done that in a while, and it was good to get that ability back. It's very nice. Remember the first time we moved Pa's mustache, it was by hand, and it was back on the Ultimate Silly Song Countdown, and
Oh, my goodness.
the animator had to animate that separately, and some people
Yeah.
did it well and some didn't.
My goodness, that's like the old days where we had to draw it.
Right. God forbid. I like this. That's funny.
Yeah, it's funny seeing them. I mean, after all, they're the pirates who don't do anything, so it's funny to see them, trying to do something.
Taking some initiative.
Nice bifocals, huh?
They're
Yeah.
very nice. Nice reflection.
They really turned out nice.
We have talented artists working on our show and technicians.
One of these shows we're going to have to open up those canisters and see what's inside.
Sugar and flour.
Well, it's awfully old. It's been sitting in there for like 12 or 13 years.
Lost.
You think there might be some bugs if we open it up? Yeah.
That might be
I
unpleasant.
bet it's just a prop, or that's where they keep extra microphones and cables. My cousin does scrapbooking parties.
Are they fun?
I've never been. She's in Canada.
It'd be a long way to go for
I've
a
visited
scrapbooking
her, but
party.
not during a scrapbooking party.
So it was kind of challenging laying out these sections with the camera because there's even one spot where we've got 7 characters on the countertop which
Oh, yeah,
is
coming
really
up.
unusual.
Yeah, these are usually very, very
That's just
easy
Bob and
shots
Larry.
to compose. Yeah.
And we relit the countertop this time too, because we'd been struggling with getting it to look just right. And so this time we said, okay, we're going to get it right this time, and then that's what it's going to look like forever. So hopefully on the next
Famous
show,
last words.
hopefully on the next show we won't have to relight the countertop again.
Oh,
I've been
something-
wanting to do that for years. So.
Are you happy with how it turned out?
Yeah, looks really nice. You know, it's funny, the animators did talk about that they'd never actually seen the front edge of the countertop. And
Right, because
And
we
they
had it so
actually see
But
wide.
then I told them, but a long time ago, he actually had a sink on the countertop,
Yeah.
and they were astonished.
There's and cabinetry,
cabinetry.
but that's not there anymore.
Yeah.
George Mueller, your other directorial debut. Debut.
Yes, here we go. This is very exciting. This segment came about because you guys had written Gideon, and it, was the length it needed to be, and it ended up not being quite long enough for the whole show. And we needed another segment that supported the theme. And Mike Mike really likes Mike Naraki, that is Larry the Cucumber, one of our writers and directors. Really likes church history and heroes of the faith. We kind of touched on that with Lutfi and his fanciful flannel graph.
Yeah, when we did St. Patrick.
And this could have almost just as easily been a Lutfi's fanciful flannel graph, except we don't do those anymore. So we did
I
it.
like the other headlines, by the way. Continue.
Yeah, if you still frame there's some funny things. So Mike went off and wrote this little script that was intended to be very simple and very sweet, and to reinforce the theme of
And true.
trusting God. Well, and it's a true story of
Yeah,
this guy,
it's-
George Mueller.
Who was lived in, was it 18th century England?
That's
Or
correct.
19th century.
Late 18th century England.
Okay.
And he started orphanages.
He started
He
orphans.
started orphans. Maybe those
That's
two.
a totally different story, I think. Yeah. One that we couldn't do.
He believed God wanted him to create lots of orphans. So he started these orphanages, and basically never decided that as to prove God's existence in a scientific way, he was going to support these orphanages and support these children by praying for everything that they needed, and never asking for donations. They would accept help when given, but never go out, and fundraise or ask for money when they needed it. And so we've shown just one little example of that, which is documented in his prayer journal that he kept during his life, where he would write down everything he prayed for, and every time it was answered, where he prayed for breakfast, and the next morning a baker and a milkman showed up with breakfast for the kids.
It happened almost exactly as we're presenting it, except
With the exception of the newspaper reporter. We've kind of
and
added
and
Simon.
the characters were real people, not vegetables.
That's not proven,
And they didn't actually sing His Eyes on the Sparrow.
because that hadn't been written yet.
Right.
But it's a great hymn, so
It is. And it seemed appropriate.
it is appropriate. So we added Simon, or Mike added Simon, the reporter, as kind of a window for the audience into this world, because it's when you're stepping into a new world or a new situation, if people just go about their normal daily lives, you can't really figure out what's going on unless you have a character in there asking, well, why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? What's going on here? So that's why we added this Simon
It speeds
character.
things up quite a bit, too.
Right.
You want to say anything about all these little photos on the
Yeah, the
wall?
little paintings on the... who did those? Because I know they're all photos of the orphans that live there, right?
Joe Spataford did those, and they're pretty much just like renders of they're
really?
they're the concept art that we created, and then
that's
just
handy.
kind of painted with backgrounds in. But then like that landscape back there on the left, that goes back to like Star of Christmas, I think maybe.
Did Joe do that, or
Michael Spooner might have done that.
Oh my goodness! Oh, right.
Oh,
up
and
in
then
the corner?
there's a little cameo of like a grandmother character.
Yeah, but that's from Minnesota Cuke. That was
Okay.
in the barbershop. That's the barber's
the barber's aunt, grandmother or
mom.
mom,
Mama Leone.
right? So we reuse little textures like that all over the place.
Now, what's the painting above the piano?
That's
I
a
can't-
still life that I think Joe created new for this. I don't think we've seen that before.
Now, is this
Hopefully
the
we'll
same
see it
piano
again.
from Going Up? Or is it
No,
not?
it's the same piano from Minnesota Cuke.
Oh, we had a piano in Minnesota
I'm
Cuke?
sorry, Minnesota Cuke for Sherlock Holmes.
Oh, okay.
So right there in that little exchange, we had actually taken out a little bit.
That's right. I forgot. We edited it.
where we cut it out during the story stage, where Simon offered to run an ad in his newspaper telling people that George Mueller's orphanage needed help.
Yeah.
And George Mueller turned him down.
saying, I'm only going to pray. I'm not going to ask for help.
I'm not going to ask for help. And it's like, well, you're not asking for help. He's offering help. And you're turning down
I
help
know.
that he's offering.
Right.
It seemed like I'm going to pray for an answer to my prayer. Hey, I can help. No, I'm going to wait for an answer.
These kids may starve, but I won't accept your help. So we took a line out there and actually moved it here where he offers to go. He offers, maybe I can run
Almost
out
offers.
in... Well, that was actually supposed to be said the night before, but we moved that here. And then, because Simon was a character that we were injecting into this.
Yeah, we made him up.
We made him up, and then by having him interact with George Mueller in that way of offering to run an ad and then have George Mueller turn it down, we were kind of making up something about George Mueller that wasn't true. So we decided to make Simon more of an observer and less of an active participant, and it just kind of softened the story, and it ultimately brought out the themes of faith that we were trying to illustrate.
Now the music in here, I love that take, by the way. But the music, this is one of the
Never done that before.
This is one of the very few shows we've done that Kurt Heineke did. Well, this episode of it, he did do Gideon, but he did not do the score for.
That milk wasn't supposed to be milk. It was just supposed to be dark or solid white bottles.
Our technicians went over and above and gave us actual liquid in those bottles.
Looks
But
nice.
who was
though.
the composer on this again?
It was John Keltonic, a guy that
Keltonic.
Kurt discovered,
Yes,
and
because you worked with him. I didn't on this because I was in the other part.
because as David talked about, we're working on this movie, and there's lots of stuff going on, and Kurt just doesn't have time to do everything himself. So we outsourced a little bit of the music to this new composer, and he did a terrific job. A lot of fun working with him.
I still haven't still framed through this to see what else is written in his journal.
Oh, there's a little alien UFO that Pa drew. That actually Paul Dobson, one of the guys in Canada, was like, well, we need something on that other page of the book. And so he sketched it up real fast. And he said, how about this? And it's actually a dolphin in a spaceship. You can still frame that and maybe even zoom
How
in.
thematic.
Yeah, it was funny. So this is just a real sweet little simple story that illustrates our central theme of trusting God. And I love this set. This turned out great.
Great segment, and
Well,
Brian, you did a
probably-
great job.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It
My
was a
hat
lot
is
of
off
fun.
to you.
Oh, that was real nice.
Now there's some extra dialogue coming up in here that we added too, because it turned out that it felt like we were trying to teach that if you could pray for anything, you'll get it.
Right, and
And
using
without-
God as a universal vending machine.
Yes, as
Right.
our genie in the lamp, and like, no, that's not true. So this line about knowing the difference between a need and a want helps tie that up. Like, no, George Mueller had a specific purpose. He had a calling.
Right.
He wasn't just didn't have a wish list.
Right.
So
it's
he was
kinda-
blessed by God, but he was blessed by God because he was within his will, not because
That's right.
God wants to give us lots of stuff.
Right. That's a lot. That's important for us to always remember that God's blessing comes as we do what He asks us to do and what He wants us to do. And that's what we were trying to bring out in this
Per se.
per se.
That makes me laugh every
Every
single time. I would have laughed then, except David was talking and I was listening to
It would have
him.
been okay if you laughed. You can laugh.
I would,
then
but
we
I
sa-
didn't even hear it because I was listening to you.
But we would have sounded like we were laughing at you.
And that's
Well,
just rude.
But you do frequently. So that's okay.
Now the silly song here was supposed to actually come out on Larry Boy. We wrote it a long time ago, but then when Larry Boy was in production, we came up with the Larry Boy theme song.
Well,
the
plus
new
it just
one.
felt weird to do a regular silly song in the middle of a Larry Boy
Yeah.
Right.
So
episode.
when the new Larry Boy theme came up, it was just very natural to bring that in and say goodbye to this one, or postpone it, I should say.
That worked out really well.
Yeah, it did because it's really not. It's nice on this show.
Love that title card. I
Yeah.
want that on a shirt.
Me too. Yeah, John Troush did that title card.
Let's work on that. So
Well, it
Bob's-
ended up being a really great setup because you got the pirates
Yeah.
taking over the countertop, and you got Bob kind of pushed to the side. So why not?
Right.
hit
Well,
him
it
with
was
the song?
similar in the last one too, because Bob was also pushed to the side. So
Right.
that theme, yeah, it bothered Kurt a little bit that the lyrics were just written on a piece of paper. They weren't actually printed with staff. and everything.
Right.
Well, and it bothers me that the piece of paper is square and not 8 by 11 or 8.5 by 11.
It's A4. It's an English piece of
That's
paper.
right.
It's European because they're French.
Where'd the wiggly turtle
The
tubies
Wiggly
come from?
Turtle tubies came from Mike Naraki's
That's just silly.
crazy, silly brain.
That's me.
It's fun to say wiggly.
Wiggly, wiggly. He gets him hooked into that way. This show must go on. He can't turn it down.
Speaking Bob's
Yeah.
language. Okay, the funniest thing in this whole song to me is the drummer P and how he just goes da 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 every once in a while.
Yeah.
Makes me
I still
laugh.
wonder how they're operating those.
It's mechanical.
Yeah.
I know, it's like those,
There's a little pea
it's like those
running a
billboard
crank.
ads, and when you go in a convenience store, and the NASCAR driver's waving to you, asking you to buy whatever soft drink
It's battery powered. It's totally battery powered.
You painted all those props, didn't you, Tim?
I
All
painted
those-
the turtles. Chuck Vollmer painted the
okay.
volcano and the palm tree.
The turtles are just hilarious. So funny.
I like her feet dangling.
Yeah.
His-
Yeah.
I think they added that, didn't they?
No, I asked for that.
Well, you're smart. You're a good director.
Thank you. You're a good director too,
Oh, now.
and you're a good producer.
This is. I wasn't asking for that.
You're just
I was
wonderful
just
folks
starting to
around
get sick
here.
to my stomach.
No, I'd actually, I'd suggested to the technicians that when they turn the fan on, that the hair, Bob's hair, waves, and they said that was too hard. Even though we did it back on Josh and the Big Wall,
Yeah,
Bob's
but that was
hair
a whole
waved.
different software back then.
Well, that's true.
It was in a galaxy far, far away.
But it's funny we could do something 10 years ago that we can't do now.
Well, we probably could. It's just
How much does it cost?
Time and money.
But we can shred paper now.
But we can shred paper, which I'm like, okay, if we can shred paper.
Well, this is where part of this idea came up from, because we have those little magnetic poetry sets on the refrigerator, and I love just randomizing words.
We had to work at this a lot to get this to work out. That he taped
yeah.
together so fast in the middle of this chorus.
It's a lot of cartoon physics, how they tape
Right.
it together so quickly.
But if you keep it entertaining enough, no one will ever notice.
Well, they won't care because they're laughing so hard.
you point it out.
Well, but at this point, they've already watched the show, so. Hope.
How do you
I hope
know?
there's
Maybe
not.
they watch this
I hope there's
first.
nobody out there watching the commentaries first, because that would just ruin
Actually,
the show for
I
you.
have a friend who does.
Right.
An old friend of mine who's like 10 or 11 years old, and when he gets it, he watches all the special features and all the commentaries, and then watches the show. He just enjoys it better that way.
Is that Kieran?
Mm-hmm.
He's a great guy. We love Kieran. Hi, Kieran. Okay,
you
so
just,
Kieran
you just
does
made
it.
his year. I like her little hibiscus flower behind her ear.
We had to work with them on that.
Notice the pattern back there with the cows and bongos? That's from an older T-shirt design that John Trouse did.
He like stole it
Cows and bongos.
from himself.
You know, he borrowed it.
Oh,
We're a moral company.
Well, here's a set that we really took from the.
It's on our back lot.
You've seen this, and we've seen both the set and we've heard the music before.
Yes, the set was, you probably have already guessed, was from Babysitter in Denial, the Miriam story. And I like the inflatable Ten Commandments. by
And
the
the
way.
music.
The music was from Bully Trouble.
Holy troubles.
We needed that marching band sound, and we thought, well, we have that.
And where's the confetti from?
The confetti is from heaven. See how it's just raining down? It looks like they're in a confetti snow globe.
Right. Actually, when we shredded that paper, we just dyed it.
right. We colored each piece by hand. with a
I like
marker.
the way the announcers are wearing
Painstakingly.
scarves in the middle of the blazing
Because
desert
it's a
sun.
joke on the Rose Parade.
Oh, I know that. I know what the joke is.
I was hoping
I
you
helped
did.
think of it. So, that's why I like it.
He likes that
I was
joke.
just pointing that out to the fans.
He was just trying to make it more funny.
Oh, he feels guilty.
Yeah.
Stop the parade.
No, we were going to reuse some other scooters besides those because we were getting the list of props we were going to need to build. It was getting rather long, and somebody asked, "Well, can we just use a scooter from Larry Boy?" And okay, if we recolor it, we can use that one. And then whoever the modeler was didn't get that message, and they made the new scooter anyway. Oh, recognize that music?
Changed forever.
On the tuba?
No, the baritone.
Now,
Yeah, Kurt
now-
gave me grief because that's not actually a tuba. It is a baritone.
So actually, the show is not named properly. It should be Gideon Baritone Warrior.
La la la,
Which-
I will conquer you.
I don't think that sounds quite the same. It doesn't have the
have a ring
same
to it, does it?
ring. No, it's not as funny. Tuba is funny. Baritone is
Well, maybe he plays the tuba. We just never actually see it in the show.
that could be.
That is the obvious truth.
You're so logical.
Yes.
Now, why are his brothers so small?
Because they're peas.
Well, touche. Okay, I was trying to set you up, and you
In
just
the
spiked it
script,
into my
yes,
face.
In the
That's okay.
script, they were written to be bigger than he was, but it just seemed. Oh, I love that.
Oh,
little
he's
effect.
purple. Yeah.
It just
great.
seemed funnier if he kept calling them his big brothers and they were tiny. Plus, it was a reuse from the idea from Little Joe, and
Right.
then the costumes were kind of a reuse from Bully Trouble as well. When Junior was playing on the team with all the other little P's. We repainted the helmet.
Did we do anything new ever?
Yes, look at this. This is a new Paul model as an angel. And we even redid this during the show because remember originally he had the little stick up to hold the halo in place like it was a prop.
Like you would at a pageant.
And I think it was you who brought up the idea that realized that, if he's a real angel, he should look like...
You, me?
You.
Oh, yeah. I'm pretty smart.
Yes, he should look like a real angel, not a prop angel.
Right, so we took the stick out. Hey, who's
cameo,
that? Who's that?
Hope the Angel. That was your idea too, wasn't it?
Well, you don't have to give me props for everything.
I'm not.
But thank you.
But that was originally, I think we had a little carrot angel on the front.
Yeah, we had a carrot angel, but then even though it was a carrot, it looked too much like the guy on the actual...
On some of those other books.
Other books that should go unnamed.
Right. So we decided to get far away from that, and I actually I
funnier.
painted that little Hope.
Well, Hope was end up funnier. If you don't know where Hope comes from, it's the
Go buy
Easter
a copy
Carol.
of Easter Carol. I'm sure it's on sale by now.
I think you can only buy it at Easter.
Oh, really?
Except on Amazon.
And other online retailers.
Right.
Oh, EG. Remember, that was
good
originally, it was
grief.
written, we went round and round. Originally the line was IE. But then we looked it up in IE. I don't remember what the Latin words are.
means-
Doesn't mean, for example. It means
In other words.
in other words.
And EG means for example.
So oh man, there were a lot of re-recordings and rewritings and.
Well, we actually argued about it for a while because most people think IE means for example.
Yeah.
And then Chris Wall, our editor, says, well, but it doesn't really, so we can't teach kids that something means something that it doesn't. And then I'm like, but it's funnier. And finally, we just decided to do what's right instead of what's funny.
It is funny.
Now, I love the randomness of this, that Paul just asked out of the blue for a lemonade.
A lemonade,
would be fine.
Maybe they don't have lemonade in heaven, and so whenever he comes to Earth, like when we go back to
If they
Chicago,
don't have lemonade in heaven,
like when I go back to Chicago, I always try to get a Portillo's dog because we
Right.
don't have those in Nashville.
It's just unusual when somebody offers you something to drink to say, "Oh, a lemonade would be fine."
It's pretty funny.
Well, it is, and just to give reference to, that is based on the biblical story where Gideon does go get a meal to serve his angelic visitor.
Right.
I love that smoke cloud thing. That was awesome.
Yeah, it turned out nice.
Wait, I've been chosen to lead an army? I think there's
Gideon's a wonderful character to me because he believes God, but he just doesn't know for sure that God is really calling him, asking him to do this.
Yeah, and biblically too, he was really unsure that God even wanted to help them all because he said, if God's on our side, how come the Midianites are everywhere?
Right.
on the Tuba.
And he really had to go through several phases of convincing.
My brothers are bigger and stronger.
No, the little peas.
Tell you the truth.
That's why it's funny.
Scream like a girl.
Put me in the dark and I do too.
I love that line.
Yeah, Mike did a great job.
Sorry.
The
He
very
usually
Can't
does.
do it.
You trusted
He did
on
an
an angel.
exceptionally great
You
job.
trusted I was sent from
Oh, here's
God.
my favorite line coming up here in a second.
Me too, me too.
I thought you were coming
And
to
I'd be
give me
quiet
a
from
pep
it, but
talk. Well
we're
done,
supposed to
good
do
faithful servant. But
a
this is
commentary.
way out of
I'll be
my
quiet for the
league.
line because here it is.
You want to hear the Lord say, well done, and then you'll have to do what he asks.
I think it's one of the
yeah.
greatest
Yeah.
messages we've ever done
I think
on,
so, too.
on one of our shows.
It makes me teary.
He wants you to
You want a
defeat the
tissue?
invading
I'm
Midianites.
all right. I got a shirt.
How many Midianites are we talking
And that kind of goes into what we were talking about earlier in the George Muter. We were trying to tie in, being blessed by God is being and doing what he wants you to do.
It's just a little pea.
Ever notice when you go to a canyon in any movie, we hear a hawk?
Uh-huh.
Are those cows in there?
It's,
Are those
yeah,
moose? I was trying to say, are those moos in there? Are
there's
those cows
definitely
mooing?
there's
Yes,
definitely
there's-
cow sounds in there.
Pretty
Yeah.
funny. The canyon turned out real nice.
Didn't it? It did a
Yeah,
great job.
That eye's hilarious.
That was an addition from our animators. That wasn't storyboarded or even asked to be that way.
Nice
But
talking to you.
I don't think we've ever done that before either.
That's
It's
beginning.
funny. It's a good cartoon
Well,
logic thing.
well, what?
Yeah.
I'm not fighting them. There's no way I can defeat an army that
I'm
large.
just kind of slow, and it took me a long time to get this, to catch these. Paul keep continuing to
Oh,
appear on the other side of Larry. I had to follow those through several times to go.
Do you get it now?
No, not really.
No, it's still.
This time you made a mistake.
God never
It's a
makes
tough gag to
mistakes.
pull off.
Not once,
Not that you guys didn't get it, but I'm just not that bright.
Although, as far as I'm concerned, the jury's still out on spiders.
That I get.
But if I did, I'd need a sign first.
A sign?
I've got to know absolutely.
Yeah, this is where it was good that we took off the stick from the angel, because Gideon believed the angel, and yet if he looked
Need
fake,
a sign?
Yeah.
then
It'd
why
be-
would he believe
why would
him?
he
So it was
believe
important
that?
that he looked real.
I was just admiring the backgrounds again. Joe and Chuck's paintings back there.
They're lovely. This song, when we first got the script, we realized this song is going to be one of the longest songs in VeggieTale
It
history.
was almost longer than 113 years ago from Easter Carol.
It's
And
amazing.
Just chapters.
And we had so much detail to cover in it, to try to cover visually, the creation.
Well, and the
and-
screen direction on the script says things like, and then 100 children appear and morph into the earth, and
Right.
then
Yeah.
the
Right.
earth morphs into 100 hands, and we're like,
I'm just-
okay,
I'm just
first
like,
of all,
Very creative visually.
what is
but-
morphing? We don't do that. So we had to figure out a way to actually animate it.
Did you say what is morphine?
Morphing.
Oh, morphing. Okay.
I'm just trying to get myself to breathe while I'm reading the script. It's like, how are we going to get this
That's like the
done?
Crystal Palace heart attack.
Yeah.
From Star of
What
Christmas.
sign do you need before you'll trust God?
So we worked out this new way of.
Backwards,
Excuse me.
mountains to fold out,
Bless you.
talking vegetables that
You
don't
still
like
tearing up from that line?
No, I'm all right.
Okay.
So we want, and well, it was this cool song, and it was on a screen, so we wanted something different visually. So we came up with this kind of flat treatment where everything was flat and very graphic.
Kind of 2.5D.
And Brian did to his credit, Brian did the early testing with Paul on that sort of, on the moon and the flowers and things like that.
Well, right. The original plan was that we were just going to just have Pa as like a 2D cutout whose mouth just kind of opened and closed, and that was going to be it as far as his animation. As he turned into all these different things,
Anything
and
else?
I
Take
felt
it a
really
step
strongly.
further.
Well, I felt like for as long as the song was, and as much as Pa carried it, he really needed to be fully expressible. It needed
Right.
to be a fully animated character, and yet we knew that we weren't going to model flowers and globes and fish with
And
Pa's face
Abraham
on
and
it.
Isaac and Jacob and
Right.
Paul and Billy Graham.
So
Well, and it was-
we came up with this hybrid where we took Pa's real face, that's his face just like you would see when he's a grape, but we took it off of the grape and we rendered it out separately and put it onto all these different surfaces.
Well, I think it kind of worked really good because you got Paul appearing in this kind of show world inside the movie, and yet he's sort of halfway appearing in it, which is kind of fun.
But he's an angel.
He's an angel.
He's got credentials.
So he can do that.
Now, this prop is the one thing that in the show that I was never.
Fur
like,
is just
this
so
a,
hard.
I wondered. This is a fleece, right? But
Yeah,
I
like
wondered,
you
like, is
wash
it
your car
a
with.
dead something or?
No, you cut it off of a sheep. You don't actually skin the sheep.
No, I
You
know,
get-
but what it looks like in the show.
I know it looks like
It's like
roadkill. I know,
roadkill. This is-
but that's
this a
our
cat
that's-
that got
yeah,
hit? I
That's,
didn't know
that's
what the-
not anybody's fault but my own.
No, it's not. It's not to blame. It was just always to me looked odd.
Is that from that cat sound effect that we heard earlier
Yeah.
when
Yeah,
the football went off
right,
screen?
right, exactly.
A cat fleece.
The remnant.
There's always a hawk in a canyon, and there's always a cat when their stuff gets knocked over. That's a general rule of sound effects, right?
This is really cool right here. The waves and I love that effect.
Yeah, we were trying
Like
to
the fish.
islands coming up and seas.
Yeah.
I'm
How are
reading
we gonna
fish
do
jumping
that?
up out of the
Water's not
water.
expensive. I love this what Kurt did with this song too, because the temp track was fun, and then when he did the final, oh man, it really came up several notches. That's you singing too. You and Kurt.
Me and
did-
Kurt,
you
yeah,
and Kurt
as
did the back-
usual. Whenever we have a choir, it ends up being like me and Kurt. Maybe sometimes Mike or Phil might hop in on it. We need more singers around here.
You're our dedicated tenor.
Yeah, I am, and Kurt's our dedicated bass.
That can be put on your business card now.
Dedicated tenor.
Director and dedicated tenor.
And usually I'm either a P or a fat gourd. I don't know why that ends up that way.
But you want us?
Typecast.
We don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now the idea of this test
Wow.
too, because I remember trying explaining this to you during the production about the idea of it. Why it seems weird. Why would a fleece be dry in the ground wet and vice versa? But it was a natural phenomenon of dew on the grass, and
It's amazing. It's
yes, dew, D-E-W, dew.
Right.
And he said, I want the fleece to be wet and the ground dry. But then he
Because what could have
realized
happened?
is the ground dries faster, and then
So the dew could have fallen. The
and
fleece would
soak
stay
everything.
wet.
Yeah,
Right.
And I thought, well, okay, let me see it the other way to make sure this is. This is an actual miracle, and indeed it was.
Here you go.
So the actual miracle was really the second day, and Gideon just realized.
Well, they're
it.
both miracles. Yeah, but I think.
But there's a explainable phenomenon for the first day, and then the second one could only happen through God's.
So we
intervention.
had to figure out to do our VeggieTale twist on what we were going to do for, the military accoutrements that
which
Gideon used in the
biblically
real battle.
were clay pots and torches and ram's horns.
I want to thank you.
So we replaced those with our own sort of brass.
And then flashlights, which are sunny.
So is that how we ended up with marching bands then?
Yes, because the clay pots were used to make noise during the battle. They would break them and then shine their lamps and then blow their trumpets. But the drum line became the breaking.
Didn't they have the torches in the clay pots, and then they took the
so.
clay
I think
pots
so.
off the torch to reveal the light?
Yeah, so
And then they
so
broke the
light,
clay pots.
The light all came on at once and
Right.
surprised the enemy. I keep bumping my mic.
The whole
Sorry,
idea
people at
was
home.
to make it seem like there's just a huge, vast army out there ready to attack.
They did that in Lost last season too.
So,
It was cool.
It all comes back.
Dead.
okay. Whoever
Oh,
doesn't
and by
want
the way,
to
too,
do it,
I didn't want to try and say.
Keep the flashlights.
Yes.
I love this bit here before I go on with what I was going to say. Oh, my flashlight! I get to keep it. Nice, nice job, Ryan. But biblically, the angel didn't follow Gideon around throughout all this. Gideon was hearing directly from God, but we didn't want to put a voice for God in the show talking to him, and have him just listen and repeat everything he heard would have been boring. So we.
Well, we've got kind of a sixth sense thing with the angel where no one else ever talks to the angel.
Yeah, it is.
It's
it
only
is, I didn't
Gideon
want to
and the
imply that
angel
anybody else
interchange.
can see him.
Right. So nobody else ever talks to him. Nobody ever pays attention to him. It's just Gideon just turns around and talks
So
to somebody.
just in
every
case
once
you
in a
were
while.
wondering, only Gideon is supposed to be able to see this angel.
Right. Now,
All
we
the
had
tests.
a lot of discussions during development over these tests, and which way the children of Israel were supposed to drink from the water to get selected and what it meant.
Yes, and because it could almost be interpreted two different ways, but we finally, came to the full understanding and conclusion that it was the soldiers who would kneel down and bring the
water up to their mouth.
and could look around and keep an eye out for the enemy, who were the.
The idea was that the ones that were selected for the final army were the ones that were going to be vigilant and attentive and really focused on their faith of trusting God. So
We'll split up into
not their
three
own
different
needs at the moment.
Yeah.
So
The enemy here, here,
This set worked out beautifully, didn't it? I really liked the
fun.
lighting on it. I liked the miniature canyon. It's a shame we didn't use it more because it's so pretty.
Yeah, it's an awful lot of work for one little gag.
right.
But it's a funny gag, so. Oh, it's so pretty at night.
We worked really hard on this scene too. This is another one that
Yeah.
Sure are a lot of them, aren't there?
On the writing of it?
that's just what I was
well, both the writing and then ultimately the boarding and in editorial to get the timing just right of,
ever have a hard time trusting God?
and it's coming up. It's really the kind of this last bit of the scene.
I know how glorious he is. I know he never breaks his promise.
When he says there sure are a lot of them, I'm never sure if he's talking about the stars or the Midianites.
I think it's a double meaning.
Maybe.
You know what I think?
This is
I
very
think you're
deep
doing great.
script.
It's easy for an angel to trust
I
God.
love those
Subtext.
clouds.
Because see, God created the whole universe, and there's a lot of it. He's big,
And the children of Israel were to be numbered as the stars of the sky, in the heavens.
Wow.
and there's a lot of Midianites against them, arrayed against them. So it was
And
who's
there's only
bigger?
7
Who's
of
bigger?
them. Wait, no, there's
You and I
13,
both
right?
know I can't do
13
this
what?
anymore.
13 warriors now, including Gideon.
I don't know. The
Six
number
peas
kind of
and 6
changes from shot
carrots.
to shot.
Yeah.
In the battle, we needed a few
There's not very
extras.
many.
We'll be done. That's it, I guess. Oh,
It's a
one more
sweet
thing.
prayer.
It is.
Could have chosen anybody, but you chose me.
The animators did a great job.
Amen.
It's very sincere.
Now, I acted this part out to show the animators how I wanted this reaction right here. I got one of Kurt's baritones and did this little thing on video. And you know what? It really works. I could hear really well when I held the thing up to my ear.
Yeah.
Was anyone talking about you at the time?
We
Yes,
actually-
and I was embarrassed at what they said. It was all complimentary, but I'm.
So we actually
Kinda
sit
humble.
around doing these things, testing these.
And this is actually from the biblical story too, where didn't Gideon snuck into the Midianite camp, right? And he
Yeah.
overheard
he had an
guys
opportunity
talking
to actually hear the Mennonite camp and realize that there was
there was worry
fear.
and discontent. Yeah, somebody did have a dream that they were going to be.
And that was after he'd already decided he was going to do what God told him.
Yeah,
And it was almost like God just saying, by the way,
It was God's confirmation that he's at work. He is at work, and it is his battle.
Are you with me? Yes, sir. I want 3 groups around the rim of the valley. Wait for my signal.
it's nice lighting
You
with the
men come
campfire.
with me.
Mm-hmm.
You go to the south end, and so we don't split the peas, you go up the middle. That he
Split
just
the
like a
peas.
split pea joke.
Split pea soup.
That's always funny. That's pretty. It's hard to make these guys wink.
You just close one eye. What's so hard
Oh
about
no,
it?
but to make it look good. But that looked good. They did a good job.
They did a great job.
Oh, you're right. There are more peas now, aren't there?
Yeah.
Now, Kurt had to do a lot of work on this
Yes, because
particular music.
the script just said insert song here because the scriptwriter could write lyrics, but the song has no lyrics.
Well, and we couldn't wait till after the animation was done to do the song because so much of the animation is driven by the song.
Yes, and we wanted, had even this, and not just general. There were like specific beats we wanted to hit, and little riffs like that where they're hitting the ground or hitting the bells of the other trumpets. So this song was completed pretty early in the production process.
Well, the music was written, and we did a temp version.
Yeah.
And then at the end, we actually came back and recorded like real drummers and
from
real
a local,
trumpet
from a
and-
local high school band, the drummers
from Kurt Heineke's daughter's
and my
high school
son's
band.
my son's high school band. Only he just
Except
joined.
he's not in the band. And his
He is
daughter
now.
Oh, he is.
He just joined
in the
this-
marching band.
He's in the marching band. He just joined. He didn't join early enough to get in the show, unfortunately.
Because he's a drummer.
Uh-huh.
That's exciting. So he's going to be in the band with Gretchen.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
I
That's
love
what-
the cold cream.
Yeah, I love that game.
and the
That's
curlers.
Curlers is always funny.
So they're fun.
That sounded a lot different in the tent version. When Kurt did the final, he really went to town on that.
It's kind of funny though if you notice, there's like thousands of these guys at the first of the show, and when they're leaving, there's only like 7 of them.
But
The Midianites?
Yeah, running away.
Well, they
No,
just
we're
See,
cutting.
well,
We're
count
intercutting.
them. Okay,
those are
right.
7 different ones each time. They just have 7 costumes.
Hey, you're the producer. It's
I just let people know. See, count them. Count the Midianites running away.
because all the others are already gone. These are the stragglers.
The stragglers. All right. I just ruined it for everybody, right?
Now this will really ruin it. The sun is behind them, but their shadows are falling
And-
No,
towards
because they
the
have a
sun.
reflector. They have a reflector over here.
Right.
You've seen them put on a movie set before.
Yeah, I love that.
That happens in just about every movie you see. And once we do it, then you give me grief.
Good job, Gideon. Here.
Even though no one can see him, they step aside so that he can
Right.
get towards Gideon.
Well, we
Right.
could have had him walk through them, but that would have just been creepy.
That would have been an effect. That's expensive.
They must have heard him coming.
Or to look like a mistake.
In my nightstand, right next to my bed.
And everybody else must be like, "Where'd that Bible come from?"
Now the next show, then Brian will pick on some of his stuff in his segments.
Yeah,
We
let's
were
back
very
it up.
easy on him
Back
on
up
this
the
show.
tape. Back up the
Back up and
video.
go back
I'm
to the
gonna-
Mueller
I'm
segment.
gonna-
We'll show you some
Talk about the
stuff.
under-table lighting in Mueller.
Right. The light.
And the misspelling on the newspapers.
Right. Well, that's Joe's fault. I blame a Joe.
I couldn't have said it better myself.
Oh, that's
and there
funny.
we are,
And
Bob,
Bob makes a cameo.
Bum bum bum.
as a balloon.
Whoa, holy
That's not a stretch.
cool. Good one. Nice job.
No, but it is an expansion of his duties.
Oh, I love the pirates who don't do anything. We should make a movie with them.
That's
You
a
think?
good idea.
Yeah.
Why don't we do that?
They're funny.
I'll go to work on
I
that
like it
now.
just about every time they appear, Paul's got something different on his hat. He's like,
Yeah.
will he have something different in the film?
He will, and you'll have to come to the movie to see.
Or just watch the trailers.
Oh, come on.
Thanks a lot.
You make it too easy, Brian.
All in all, you guys did a pretty good
We should
job.
do a different hat in each shot.
Yeah,
Or just leave it tic-tac-toe, but then change who won.
yeah, right.
Oh, this time the O's won. And now the X's.
Oh man, he got the center square.
Why not? It was funny.
That's the good
You'll be
square.
crazy not to take the center square if you're first.
Let's drop it.
I'm always suspicious of people when you're playing tic-tac-toe if they go first and they don't take the center square.
There are
Think,
ways. You
what
can-
are they up to?
I know, and it sets you off, and they win.
puts me off my
Hey,
guard.
the turtle tubies
The
again.
wiggly
turtle
turtle
tubies.
Wiggly turtle tubies. Yeah, that's me and Kurt. Peas again.
And that's a big light socket. I mean, a plug-in. I like that.
They're small tomatoes.
I
and
know.
Peas.
Vegetables and peas.
Nice.
David loves it when we write new versions of what we have learned today. So
Yeah, I
More
do.
work. We have to re-record
I
it
do.
one more time.
It's that whole thing of it'd be nice if the countertop was just the countertop for
All
once.
this different colors joke was left over from something that was written for the introducing the silly song in the first place, but it got cut out. But it was still a little silly in the end, so we left it in. And it was kind of just a random pulling out of
But
nowhere reference.
aren't they all green?
Well, their hats are different colors, you see.
and their
Ah,
turtle shell bodies are different colors.
He's a pro.
Gotcha.
Let's see if QWERTY
Isn't
has
that
a verse for us
incredible?
today. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and do not depend on your own understanding. Seek His will in all you do.
Because
and
you
He
couldn't
will
have,
direct your
4
path.
children's characters who are all the same color.
Proverbs 3, 5, and
That would
6.
just be embarrassing.
It would.
So, Rachel,
Would.
I think you should show kindness to the new girl in your
We
class.
use all the
Be kind
primary
to everyone
colors
if
on our
something
shows.
God asks us.
Do we ever use the tertiary colors?
I think we do from time to time, actually.
Green is a tertiary color.
I
That's a
really like this
secondary.
little moment between Pa and Bob, and Pa thanks Bob for letting him do something. It's a
That's
sweet little moment.
It is sweet.
It is sweet. Now he,
You're welcome. It's been nice seeing you guys show some initiative. Speaking of which, now that we got one story under our belts, I was thinking.
What's going on?
well, what's the hardest thing to do
Oh,
in getting a movie
Our
going?
pirate movie. Is that what our movie's going to be called, David?
Yeah, sure.
Our pirate movie.
Our
Sure, that
pirate
sounds
movie.
good.
That's the real poster.
Paul is a marketing genius.
No, that was because we didn't know what the title was when we were doing this. We were still working on the film, and we had a couple of working titles, and so let's come up with something a little generic.
Well,
for
something
this.
that Paul would come up
Exactly.
with, after all.
Exactly.
Right. And then he'll hand it off to the marketing people, and that's their job.
He doesn't have.
Oh,
Serious?
I can get the funding.
Yeah, that's great.
You
It's
don't
a
know how
fun
true
line.
that is.
How true he has spoken. Maybe he doesn't know much about making a movie, but he knows that.
Yeah, well, when we first wrote that, we didn't have the funding, did
Yeah, not
we?
quite.
Not
No.
exactly.
But now we do have the funding.
Now we've got the funding.
So we're making it, folks. Don't
We're
you worry.
making
And
a
we're
movie.
spending that funding
Spring of-
every day on a
Spring
every
of
great
08.
film.
day.
Spring of 08, right, David?
Should
See,
be
and-
sometime spring of
The
08.
little trumpet solo over Kurt's name. I asked him to put that back in. They said you need something musical when we introduced the music. Who did the music? So he wasn't trying to toot his own horn. I asked him to do that.
I think I'm the only director who's had to animate his own credits.
In the world?
Well, maybe not.
You don't even know that, Brian.
Like anybody could know that. No, because I always end up. John Trashed always helps us design our credits, and he gives me all the files. But then I actually have to go back and go in and animate them.
Oh,
But we designed this one to be a really easy one because since I'm also directing some other shows and helping with the movie and other things, we didn't have time for me to
have to do all the
sit there and
special
fiddle
stuff.
with lots of like on Sherlock Holmes where we did the magnifying glass.
These are very readable credits.
They
They
are,
are.
and we learn a little bit every time,
I keep going bigger, make the point size bigger.
and wider like T's.
Right.
Like the top, the horizontal parts need to be wider.
Yeah, so they don't
or
buzz
taller.
or get lost.
So they're great. There's all our great folks in Canada. Thanks, folks in Canada.
Yes,
Thanks,
thank
Dave.
you guys.
I can speak Canadian, you
Good
know.
job.
Did a
Dave.
great job.
And Justin and Rick and Joe, we love them. Thanks, guys.
And there's John Troush again.
Yay.
There's his name. Thank you for the credits. Kurt, thank you, Kurt, for all the wonderful
And John
music.
Trout's guitar. And then
Do, 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 do.
And everybody here for writing such nice stuff.
It's great stuff. That's a fun show. It's like a classic VeggieTales show.
It really is.
It's not
It's a-
huge. It's just good and funny and solid.
A
Good
cute.
job, Tim.
one
Good
for-
job, David.
good job to you.
Thank you, Brian. You did marvelous.
I'm glad to be a
And-
part of it.
And here's our big
Sign off.
sign off, our logo.
Well, why are we using this now instead of the old one? Just because it's
Because it's better.
cooler
It's
and
cooler.
newer.
Newer.
So if we've got this new version, then we definitely need a new thing on the front.
We-
Maybe on the
okay.
next show. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Thanks,
Thanks
everybody.
for coming.